Okay, we'll get started as it is now 9:30. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Maricopa Regional Continuum of Care Committee meeting. For those around the table, please turn on your microphone when speaking. This way they can hear you in the Zoom room. For those participating via Zoom, please state your name when making a comment or asking a question and mute when you are not speaking. We don't want to hear your cats. The MAG public comment process allows members of the public to comment on items on today's agenda or on items that fall under MAG's jurisdiction. If you would like to comment at today's meeting, please fill out a white request to speak card located on the information table and give it to MAG staff. We do want to hear from you. If you are in the audience today, please remember to sign in at the information table. If you are parked in the garage, parking validators are available on the information table. If you purchased a transit ticket to come to the meeting, please see staff for a ticket. Hearing assisted devices are available from MAG staff. Before we get started this morning, we want to recognize both outgoing and incoming committee members. Thank you, Tyler Rosensteel, Gerardo Pena, and Kathy Denolfi for your service on the committee. We appreciate all the work that you have done, both on and off of the committee. We would also like to welcome Stephanie Crum of Solari, Brena Padilla, Guzman of Chicanos Por La Casa, and Michelle Alberti of A New Leaf, who are joining the committee. We will now ask Haley to proceed with a roll call. Please indicate you are here and your organization after Haley calls your name.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good morning.
Michelle Alberti.
Here with A New Leaf.
Dawn Bogart.
Good morning, everybody. Dawn Bogart, co-CEO with Homeless Youth Connection.
Vanessa Carthel. Erin Cowan-Haig. Oh, sorry. Allison Cook Davis. Present. Oh, one of those mornings. Erin Cowan-Haig. Stephanie Crum.
Present.
Jessica Cruz. Nicole Gibson.
Present.
And if you could just remember to say your organization too. Thank you.
Mom.
Anne Marie Johnston.
Anne Marie Johnston with Community Bridges.
Christina Lopez.
Christina Lopez, present for NAC.
Marcy McFarland.
Marcy McFarland, Home Inc.
Jim McPherson.
Morning, everyone. Jim McPherson, Phoenix Community Alliance Social and Housing Advancement Committee.
Reina Padilla Guzman.
Present. Chicanos por la Casa.
Jennifer Page.
Jennifer Page, Mercy Care.
Aaron Rains.
Aaron Rains, City of Mesa, present.
Patricia Scott Lopez.
Patricia Scott Lopez, Arizona Complete Health, present.
Sarah Sims. Laura Scott Nicky. Michelle Stokes. Christopher Wallace. Emily Walsh. Co-chair Nathan Smith.
Nathan Smith, Phoenix Rescue Mission.
Co-chair Richard Cruz.
Richard Cruz, Human Services Candace.
Amazing. Did I miss anyone? Great. Back to you, Co-chair Cruz.
So I now get to hand it off because I have a co-chair. So now to co-chair Nathan Smith.
Thank you, Co-Chair Cruz. So the next item on the agenda is a call to the audience. This is the opportunity for the public to comment on items that fall under the Continuum of Care Committee that are not on the agenda or that are on the agenda for discussion and not for action. 15 minutes will be provided for the call to audience agenda item unless the committee requests an exception to this limit. MAG staff, were there any comments received or anyone who has joined the call to offer comments?
There were no public comments received or members of the audience wishing to speak at this time.
Thank you. We will now move on to the next agenda item.
I feel like I'm catching the ball from Chris Paul. Okay. Consent agendas will approve multiple items at the same time. Committee members can always ask for an agenda item to be pulled off the consent agenda to be heard during the meeting at which time staff can provide additional information, give a presentation, and answer any questions. Does any member of the committee have questions or comments on the consent agenda? Hearing none. Could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
This is
So
Laura from
moved.
I got it. I've got a whole earthquake because I've got it's been moved from a lot of different places. Do we have a second?
Second.
Awesome. So it's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion of the motion? Hearing none. For committee members in the room, we will do a voice vote. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, ayes. Hearing none, we'll now move to the roll call vote of those that are virtual. Haley?
Thank you. Michelle Alberti,
Aye.
Don Bogart,
Aye.
Stephanie Krim,
Aye.
Nicole Gibson,
Aye.
Anne Marie Johnston,
Aye.
Christina Lopez,
Aye.
Jim McPherson,
Aye.
Aaron Rain,
Aaron Rain, aye.
Patricia Scott Lopez, Patty, are you there? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Laura Scott Nicky,
Aye.
did I miss anyone?
Vanessa Carthel with ABC Housing. Sorry, late today.
No worries. Thank you, Vanessa. Good to see you. The motion passes. Back to you, Chair.
All right, so we're going to move on to updates. The update memo has been replaced with the reformatted MAG newsletter. Oh, sorry. Yeah, we're moving on to updates. Now that you can hear me, my apologies. Got the mic right. The update memo has been replaced with the reformatted MAG newsletter. The link can be found in your packet. The newsletter now has information for all the Maricopa Regional Continuum of Care committees, work groups, and collaboratives. Dylan Belmont of MAG staff will give the legislative update.
Thank you, Co-Chair Smith. There honestly has been like a ton of movement at the legislature lately. Crossover week happened not too long ago, so there were a lot of bills that were never heard in their initial chamber, so they're like technically dead. But at the same time, like it is that time of year where things get like a little weird and wild because those bills might pop up in like other forms. So I'll run through real quick some of the Housing Coalition's priority legislation. First of all, related to the Housing Trust Fund, the bill that I had mentioned in last month's legislative update, 1465. It was one of those where it didn't make it out of the initial committee. However, another related bill did, SB 1541, sponsored by Senator Alston. This would annually deposit 55% of unclaimed property sale monies to the Housing Trust Fund. And that one received bipartisan support in its committees, and now it's just awaiting a full vote on the Senate floor. Regarding teacherages and employee housing, SB 1289, that bill wasn't placed on any agenda in time, but it may come back later as like in the form of an amendment to another bill, a striker. The expansion to the state low income housing tax credit, HB 2318, that's in a similar position. It wasn't heard in its initial chamber. However, it may come back through budget negotiations. And the last bit of news specifically related to the coalition's priorities is that the bill to increase the DES homeless coordination line item, SB 1462, that did pass through committee and is also awaiting a full vote in the Senate. One other thing I want to touch on is zoning. There have been a lot of discussions related to zoning reforms. In particular, there is a bill to address this, SB 1117. It's changed a lot truthfully, since it was first introduced and it still continues to be changed. There remain a few concerns regarding how it doesn't call out a few specific things like affordable housing or LIHTC specifically. So, with those items being unaddressed, it's possible that it continues to develop throughout this legislative session or, come in the form of a striker to another bill later in the session. Lastly, I also want to mention that from a federal perspective, a lot of the discussion right now is focused on, the debate with the debt ceiling. So the Housing Coalition, in coordination with other advocacy organizations, is coordinating around messaging to prevent any impacts to affordable housing programs. So expect a lot of movement there too. And lastly, I'll just end with how the Housing Coalition set their day at the Capitol for April 19th. So stay tuned for more information on that if you're interested in attending. And then for any more discussion or opportunity to talk about these bills, we definitely encourage membership with the Housing Coalition and attendance to their biweekly policy committee meetings. And that's it from me. Happy to answer any questions.
Dylan, is the bill from Senator Alston that's waiting full vote, is that currently hemmed up by the 16 signature situation? Is that why it's awaiting full vote?
Yeah, so thank you for that question, co-chair. So to my knowledge, that unofficial rule is only really in place in the House.
Okay.
As far as I know, I haven't heard any example of that in the Senate. I think a lot of those bills right now that are awaiting full vote in the Senate have to do with appropriations,
Yeah.
and there are still movement in that direction. But yeah, no seeming barriers to it at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have questions or discussion about the newsletter or the legislative update?
Chairman Cruz?
All right, Jim, go ahead.
Yes. I also understand that Senators Kelly and Sinema are interested in seeking recommendations for projects in a variety of different areas like transportation and water and affordable housing and rural revitalization, those sorts of things. So again, under affordable housing, if there are service providers that are interested or have ideas for projects, bricks and mortar, now's the time to check in with the Senator Kelly and Sinema's office to talk about those and this process. They've been holding some webinars this week on the process, and the due date is coming up in a couple weeks. And I can send information to Katie or Haley if you'd like.
Yeah, Jim, just to piggyback on that, also, this is also the time for your congressional district for their community projects as well. Both of those things are all out right now, and I believe that the deadline is March 23rd. If I remember correctly, it's either March 17th or March 23rd. Either way, it's soon. So when Jim says it's coming up soon, he literally means it's coming up soon. So please, if you're interested in those types of things, they are looking for shovel-ready projects. Now is the time to jump on that. Dawn?
Thank you, Chairman Cruz. I'm not sure if this is the right time to bring this up, but it is related to legislation. HYC is championing a minor consent bill that will allow youth who are under 18, primarily 16 and 17-year-olds, to consent for their own social services and housing. We made it past the Senate, and we are trying to get it pushed to the House. It is SB 1062. If anybody wants to sign on and show support, we would really appreciate it. We've had a number of organizations already put their support behind the bill, including Home Base, UMOM, Human Services Campus, Boys and Girls Club, CAS, and a number of others. A new leaf is on as well, and we just want to say thank you to everybody for your support.
Thank you. Anyone else? Before we move? Okay. So we'll now move to the Systems Flow Dashboard. Stephanie Crum, HMIS Manager at Solari and COC Committee Member, will provide a recap of the Systems Flow Dashboard. The floor is yours, Stephanie.
All right, good morning, everyone. Let me share my screen here real quick. If this is the first time you're seeing this dashboard, just on this first page is a landing page of definitions. There's a lot of them, but if you spend some time here, it really goes in depth about who we're talking about when we're talking about our active homeless, who's inflow, who's outflow, and how one would land or not land on the by name list. But let's get into the numbers. That's why we're all here. All right, so first look at the board, we're starting to see an overall rise in our numbers, about 4% over from December to January. This is being driven by singles just because of the number rise, but if you look at percent rise, families is actually about a 5% rise and singles would be 4%, but again, just the sheer numbers are what's driving that. And then let's look down at our subpopulations. So the first two things that stick out are the largest rises that we see here are for our BIPOC population at about a 7% rise. And that's also tracking with our unsheltered, which is about 9% rise. The line doesn't look as dramatic, but it is the largest percentage rise I think that we have in the subpopulation category. But overall, everybody is experiencing anywhere between a 2 to 5% rise, depending on the population, with, of course, BIPOC and unsheltered being the largest rises. As we get into flow details, this page kind of shows us like, what is this inflow? Where are these folks coming from? This gets a little funky to look at, but what we're looking at here is that this is being driven mostly by a rise in new folks, so new to the system. Inactive was about a 5% increase, and it was pretty much an increase here from return from housing as well. Even though the number is small, that is a large increase from 83 to 100. So, but the numbers are driving it for new clients at this time. And then our outflow detail pretty much leveled off. As you can see here, there wasn't much of a change in our unknown negative exits and not too much of a change in our housing. Again, the number is still pretty high, whoops, at 567 for this month, which is higher than we've been for quite a while. So that is a win. All right, so I've been talking a lot. Let me open it up for questions.
Okay, so you see the data. What questions do you have about the data? What are the questions? What are the comments? What are the thoughts? I know that, so I'll start. I know that we're gonna, like, this question is gonna come up again in like 20 minutes or so when we're talking to Michelle. But what happened so that our number with the unsheltered, like, that increased? Like, what did that? Was it we have more outreach teams, so there's more people that were being counted, or like, what are we seeing within that to make that number rise?
That is a great question. I have not done a deep dive to see if this is just more contacts on the street or what this rise is, if this is more new people or just reaching out to old people. We haven't done a deep dive. That might be a good question for the outreach collaborative to see what they're seeing on the streets.
Yes. So like that question wasn't just to you, Stephanie, because I think Michelle's like you're here. So that's why I'm just asking, like, do we know what that is at all? Like from an outreach perspective?
Well, we would have to look at the data and like dive into it to see like what projects are they coming from, if they're new enrolled clients or were they closed out and then pop back up. So we would need to dissect the data a little bit more.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Other questions that people have when they see this data?
Stephanie, can you go to the inflow part?
It's like 1,077.
Yeah, what's the 1,077?
1,077 is the return.
Hey, Stephanie, do you think it's possible to just make your screen a little bit bigger? I have bad eyes.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Whoops, is that too big? Is that good?
No, that was perfect.
That is perfect. Thank you.
There you go. If you're looking at return from inactive, I've highlighted that line right now. That's the red line,
Bottom is return from,
return from housing.
yeah. And then we have return from active, and then the yellow line is the new clients.
Mhm.
It's below that.
Yeah, just as an observation, like it seems as though the number that went up in total households from the previous one most was singles. And it seems like inflow wise, return from inactive seems to have a spike around the same time frame. So just trying to connect data points. And so then like those of you who are super savvy, please, can you help us understand what return from inactive entails?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're talking about who these are, when we're talking about a return from inactive, is we're looking at the total number of households who were previously designated as inactive and then have reappeared or returned to homelessness over the course of that reporting month. So what that means by they were previously designated inactive is that they did not get housed, but they were not active in the system by this criteria. So they did not spend a night in a shelter. They did not have a coordinated entry assessment. They were not contacted by a street outreach team. When those things happen, someone will fall off the by name list for inactivity. And then when they return, because they're still experiencing homelessness, they just, maybe they weren't around for that month or they just didn't receive services, then they'll come back in that return from inactive category, where the difference with return from housing are those who left for housing and then came back to the system in the reporting month. I hope that makes sense.
It does, yeah. It also seems to highlight, again, getting information from the outreach collaborative as to what's happening on the streets. It seems like the data is pointing in that direction. People returning from inactive are likely could possibly be unsheltered, and it seems as though an outsized number of them are single. So, yeah, that's something that I think we could be paying closer attention to.
Other questions, comments, thoughts?
Vanessa Carthel, ABC. I just wanted to make an observation. I think each time that we review the data, especially when we see increases in active homelessness, especially in different populations, inevitably our question is what's causing it? What are the trends? So because this body is the purpose is around system solutions and all that good stuff. I know that data wise, we have some priorities of what we plan to track and report out. Is there any priorities right now around tracking reasons for either first-time homelessness or coming from inactive back into accessing resources? I know we have talked in the past about how the reason for homelessness data point in HYS can be problematic if it's not updated, but I didn't know if there was any other some plans in the works to address that. Does my question make sense?
Your question makes sense.
It's the burning question.
So my question is that a question that MAG answers, or is that a question that we want to collectively answer?
Well, considering the standoff in the room, Katie, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I guess, Vanessa, your question to us as kind of the committee and staff is like, what are we tracking? Is that the question? Or is it like, this is what we want to focus on? Because I think those are two different questions. And then I will have a better answer as whether that's a MAG question or a committee question.
The question is, the context is, we all want to know what contributes to some of these spikes. What is the plan to have a consistent reporting, or is there a plan to have consistent reporting on the reasons for those spikes?
So I think that the response is, who is spending the time to do this? So really, is this something that the committee wants to take on? If you all are not the right folks to be diving into this work and diving further into it, then you all have to say, okay, this is a question for outreach, or this is a question for data committee, or this is a question for whoever else it may be in our system. And so that is you all making that ask to that committee to do that work if you all don't feel like it is a space that you all can answer. So we're happy to make that ask. But I think one of the things that often comes from this conversation about the system flow dashboard is there are 30 asks from the committee, and all of these committees don't have capacity to take on all of these things. They all just have the same limited bandwidth that you all do. So I think prioritizing what your asks are may make it easier for committees to be able to dive into something and really stay focused on diving into what's causing that and showing over time, because we're seeing a spike now on singles, but last month we didn't see a spike. We saw a flat line. So it's also something that has to be shown over time. We can't just like dive into it for a month and then, because we're not going to have significant data results, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I'll say the the data committee has the data analytics work group that's been referenced in here before, and in large part they're doing a lot of that work, especially over time. So I think Vanessa's question can kind of be broken into two parts. Katie, you mentioned one part of it, looking at the data over time. And I think that's what the data analytics work group is doing. And one of the things that I think will come out is, I may have mentioned this last time, but it looks like emergency shelter is going to be a focal point based on what the data committee is finding. There's a lot of returns into homelessness coming out of emergency shelter, right? So that group, and that's over time. So that group's looking at that. Month by month, Stephanie presents data and we all wonder what to do with it. What does it mean? Kind of more instead of over time, but in the last month. So in other words, what activities correlated with the spike or the drop? And that would be, I think, much more difficult to do. It would be a conversation I'd want to have with the data subcommittee to say, is there a way that you can connect correlations to the data that we're seeing in a more limited time frame rather than looking historically at the data? They would say something about their bandwidth and things like that, but I think that would be a worthwhile conversation to have with that committee.
On that note, just one last thing is, I would love to, I see the update from the data subcommittee, but I see that they discuss data requests. I would love to get a presentation from them of what their data priorities are, and maybe having that pair with this standing agenda item, so that we can really talk about those solutions. But thank you.
Thank you, Vanessa. So one, if we could have it noted that for the April meeting, we'd love to have the data committee present. Two, what I want to say is that I appreciate Stephanie, because Stephanie comes in every month and she gets beat up by us because she's got the numbers, and I appreciate you having the numbers. And we have the questions that there are various entities across the continuum that have the answers to or do not have the answers to. We have to begin to ask ourselves these questions in ways that are actionable, because we are trending between, we'll get between 12 and 1,500 people that pass away while experiencing homelessness this year based on the current numbers, right? And so we're it's serious, right? So we can't just say, especially in a space where we acknowledge that we all work beyond our capacity, that we just don't have the capacity to ask ourselves the questions, while meanwhile we are the county with the fastest growing homelessness population of those experiencing homelessness in the country. So when we go to conferences and they begin to present about us, and we ask ourselves, what did we do or what didn't we do because we just didn't have time? We can work smarter and figure that out. soapbox and beating up on people, beating up on a system, not on people. But we have to be able to do more. And we know that these questions are going to come every month. And so we have to figure out, like, how do we begin to get these answers so that we can do things actionably, or how do we address this that's on the board in a different way so that we can create actionable solutions and invite community in to come up with things that we're willing to work on. We got to move. So,
Sorry, I just want to jump in and say one thing. So I know Vanessa said this, but I just want to echo it. We do give all the updates for all of our committees, work groups, and collaboratives are doing in the newsletter. And those are also all open meetings. So you can join the work group, the data analytics work group, and you can join the data committee. Like not being a committee member, obviously, but joining it to observe. So I would definitely highly encourage that. We can make the ask of the data committee, but just as, you know, sometimes it could be a heavy ask to ask you guys to come and present to other committees. That may be the case with them too. So I just want to make sure that we're, you know, still being respectful of everybody's time. And if it allows for our schedule, maybe making it a priority for us to go to those meetings. And then also, I just feel like I always have to plug this. All the committees are lateral. So like you guys can help assign tasks to those other committees, but they can also do that back to you too. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. So I just feel like we have this misnomer of like there's some sort of hierarchy with like the board and then the committee and then all other committees. And I just want to clarify that that's not the case. The board oversees all the other committees. So just want to plug that there. Okay, I will shut up now. Thanks.
I want to just do a quick plug for data committee and data analytics as the MAG lead over those groups. I think there's also sort of a misnomer with data committee at times as well, where I would think of them more as like HMIS data oversight committee, in that they are doing a lot of that like policy work, and they're like this year wanting to move towards like, okay, we have that down, so let's look at how we better create narratives around data and make sure it's accessible and communicated out to the community. The data analytics work group, which sits under the data committee, was formed to specifically do that, like answer those questions, like why is this spike going up? But they, in a lot of ways, function as like a group that is looking for direction from you all, the board, other committees, so that they know they have an idea of what the priority is. And something that would be possible would be the committee being like, we are really rallying behind this like rise in singles that we've seen in these quarters. And that's what we want to focus on. So like, let's all get together. And that's like the committee as a group's like priority. And then they can bring that to the board, and then the board discusses that, and then like comes to data committee, and data committee goes, yes, we see that too. Like, let's assign that to the data analytics work group. So that could be a way in which like these things move forward and happen, which could be cool. We would love direction.
Can I also add clarity that any data request that's going to data committee that they're approving is external folks. So this is people who are looking for access to HMIS data, who are not necessarily, Jessica's nodding her head, she sits on that committee, so does Jen. It's like ASU wants to do research on people experiencing homelessness, and therefore they need access to HMIS data. Or it's people in the system looking for a data release back out to them. So like, for example, if Richard was looking for not just HSC data, but data across the system, all of those have to go through data committee for release back out. So that's what a lot of those data requests that you see. I think the one that came through in February was Cheer from ASU was looking for data on retinal degradation and
retinal
people experiencing homelessness. So it's very specific type things that they're looking for data requests on, and will not necessarily expand out to some of the things that you all are also looking at on more of a system level.
You're talking about the committee as a whole more than the data analytics work group? Yeah, gotcha.
May I ask a question? And I don't know if this has been brought up before or thought of before, but it seems like, to Cleo's point, if we're talking about, you know, the data committee working on writing a narrative, I think there needs to be, and this is just my opinion, some sort of convergence between outreach, the people on the streets who are getting the information, informing the data committee. And I don't know that that's necessarily happened, or has it happened and I just missed it, where, you know, we have people who are, you know, at the campus, like seeing this inflow, you know, they're the ones who are talking to the people and asking the questions, you know, where did you come from? Why are you here? Like, what can we do for you? Are they talking to the numbers, or can anyone speak to that?
I think maybe what Cleo said was a little bit misconstrued. The data committee's goal is to really have people understand what is the system flow dashboard, not necessarily the trends inside of it. How do you get this data? What is the homelessness trends report? What data is actually available in our community? How do you look at system performance measures? I think oftentimes, like we had a data walk set 8 months ago, and it was like really eye-opening for a lot of people in our community because they don't necessarily understand the nuances of the data and like what does it actually mean. So I think that is some of the things that data committee is working on. I think the step after that is once people understand all of these different elements, then like what does it mean? Like what do the trends mean, if that makes sense?
So what I'm going to propose is like a new data walk, but also with action that's tied to it, that's rooted in bringing the most brilliant people in the room, which are all the people that are doing this work, so that we can actually think, like, so that when the question comes up, the person that's working on it is in the room, or the people that are touching it are in the room. Because for your point, for example, if you're talking about the unsheltered population, I'm like, yeah, a third of them are outside of my campus, right? So from that context, I know what's going on within that particular space, and we can speak to something around that. And like, what are the things that we can actionably test in the room, right? And so like we can work together with the different committees to figure out what we like, when we can come together, what it is that we want to present, right? What it is we want people to go through. Because even the data walk, the one we did last year, it was a good first step, but there were a lot of questions that were deeper, right? And so like, even when it comes to like what data might be presented in that space, like how do we go deeper into that so we can actually have things that we can chew on. And then we think of, there are all these people that are in the room that didn't just come to look at each other, right? But we came to do something and be impactful. So what do we then want to do, right? And I think like we can get that like scheduled at some point, and figure out like what it is that, like, what does that look like? But like to plant that seed so that we can figure it out, get something scheduled, figure out like how we collaborate across these. Because especially if we are lateral, right? And since we are lateral, then we can have a lateral conversation, and, you know, do all the official stuff that we need to do. But like, there's work that like we need to get in and not just meet. We need to get in and work, right? And I know there's work groups, but I mean like not siloed work. Like we all get together and work and tackle the problem. Because that's what we actually come here to do. So I'm going to encourage us to move though, because we ate up a lot of but it was good conversation and I appreciate it.
Yeah, let's go on to, we're going to talk some more data actually. So Cleo Warner, Human Services Planner at MAG, we'll go through this ringer again, is going to provide us an overview of the homelessness trends report for Q1.
Thank you. Yeah, so if you missed your opportunity to talk about data, here's another one. This will be kind of like a look back in time a little bit as compared to what we just saw on the system flow dashboard. Not the strategic plan, we're almost there. Thank you, Jeremy, sorry. Homelessness trends report. So this is our report for Q4 of 2022. So wrapping up what our year looked like. This, as a reminder, all these numbers are coming from the Homelessness Management Information System, or HMIS, unless otherwise noted here on the report. So let's just quickly go through this because, again, we just saw the most updated numbers. They don't look like this anymore. A lot of this quarter was very steady, which was nice. This is our actively homeless households on this first chart. These are people who recently engaged with our homeless service providers. So as you can see, singles and families remaining relatively steady with no significant increases or decreases, which was similar to the previous quarter as well. And then moving down to our new to system folks, these are households that are experiencing homelessness for the first time. And again, the numbers you're seeing on here are households, not individuals. The narrative will provide you with those individual numbers most of the time. Again, we are seeing it quite steady, even with this decrease in our new to system, which we now know was a sharp increase this most recent reporting month. Moving down to positive exits, these are households that leave the system and move into permanent housing on their own. And we see this very significant positive exits increase in December. Moving down to our demographics page, this is just showing a snapshot of the demographics of our heads of household in our system. So we continue to see on the gender side, majority male head of household as opposed to female. Moving down to our race and ethnicity, we continue to see a disproportionate representation of Black and Indigenous folks. This is nothing new to our system. Moving past that, you'll see a little age groups. Again, this 25 to 61 heads of households, not shockingly, our largest group. That remains consistent pretty much definitely remains consistent quarter to quarter. Then we have at the very bottom here, this nice little comparison to Maricopa County census data. So you can reference what's in the county compared with the demographics breakdown showing up in our system, which gives us an extra little look at disparities. Moving to our subpopulations page. So this shows us number of households experiencing homelessness, and also the dotted lines underneath are inflow and outflow of each subpopulation. So the first, I'll just highlight a little bit of each of these subpopulations. Families saw a slight decrease, and the number of people in families, this subpopulation category has decreased 27% since its February 2022 peak. So nice to see that number continuing to be on the decline for this quarter. Older adults, again, nothing new here with the increase of 34% since December of 2021, so a year ago, and that's 6% increase since the last quarter. This brings us to the highest number of older adults in the system that we've seen, which is not new information. We've been talking about this for a couple of months now. Down to youth, there was a decrease of 5% since the previous quarter. Veterans, also a small decrease. And then down to the chronically homeless, remained relatively steady, which continued the trend from June of 2022. Jeremy, if you could scroll down just a little bit for chronic. Thank you. All right. Now we move down to our system performance measures. So, as you can see in most of these rectangles that we have blocking out each of our system performance measures, we see trends in the wrong direction on the whole, but I wanted to just point out a couple of these where we do see some highlights. First, point out we like to see the increase in job and income growth, 1% change, not a lot, but it's nice to see the green arrow there. Then we have a reduction in first-time homeless as well. There was a large jump the previous quarter, so nice to see that 7% change on that performance measure. And if you have any other questions about those specifically, we can go through them. But Scrolling down to the very bottom of the page is just another way that you can look at who was served and what programs we have going on, and changes over time specifically. This is just another way to conceptualize pretty much the same data. So we have on here comparisons to last quarter and last year, keeping in mind these are snapshots from a single night for some of these. So that's where we're getting those numbers. And we added 5 new projects to the system, 3 emergency shelters and 2 permanent supportive housing projects this quarter. And that was quarter 4 of our system for the homelessness trends report. Let me know if you have any additional questions on this. As a reminder, actually, this is already posted to our website under our data tab in the homelessness section of the MAG website. So you can go check it out there and spend more time with it. Also on our data page, we have these nice sort of summed up 5 synthesized takeaways from the homelessness trends report. If you don't have time to go through the whole report, you can go to that data landing page and see those 5 synthesized points from the reporting quarter. Thank you, everyone.
Cleo, do you know who the 3 emergency shelters were that went up? Does anyone know that?
I do not. I think Katie might have that
Katie, our resident encyclopedia, will figure that out.
in 2 minutes. She'll have
Yes.
it for us.
Does anyone have comments or questions for Cleo?
Yeah, this is Laura. I have a quick question. On the demographic snapshot page, I'm assuming that the 49 children there are 49 households with children, because I know that can't be right, that we only had 49 homeless children.
Yes, those would be heads of households that are considered in the 0 to 17 range. So this age category isn't reflecting individual children.
So those are minors who have children.
No, these are, Katie, correct me if I'm wrong, but these are children 0 to 17 who are classified as their head of household. So they don't belong to a larger family with an older head of household.
So unaccompanied youth?
And unaccompanied youth, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Laura, one of the reasons that we, on the next page, Jeremy, if you scroll down, pulled out under the subpopulations, we do classify how many, in that second paragraph, how many people in families was specifically because that demographics page is solely based on head of household and not based off of everyone. So we wanted to make sure that we are still capturing like how many kiddos and people are in families because it's not reflected in that demographic page.
Okay, we may just want to have an asterisk there for people in the community, because I'm not sure if I don't understand it. I don't know that people in the community are going to understand that.
Thank you for that. We can work on calling out the fact that that age group is capturing just heads of household more clearly.
Thank you.
This is Jennifer. I had a quick question. For the 5 new projects, is there a way to identify the number of beds that represent? So for the shelters, I know you asked, what the shelter, who the shelter providers are, but I'm just curious about the number of like permanent supportive housing beds that added.
Yeah, so I again think that is information Katie will be able to find for us, maybe.
Have it right here. So the 3 new shelters were Rio Fresco from CBI, NAC's drop-in center that's being funded for runaway homeless youth, and then Home Base Surprise. And then the 2 new PSH housing projects are CBI's bonus project expanded from 37 to 74. And then the new project that is a public housing authority project that they've designated 50 public housing authority units specifically in combination with community bridges for expansion of H2. If you want further information, I'm happy to expand on that, Katie.
Do you have any sense of how many emergency shelter beds that amounts to?
off the top of my head, it's about 157.
Okay. Thank you, Katie. Also, just pointing out, like, there's, you know, I don't have all the, we don't have all the information. At least I certainly don't have all the information to make confident connections between the data that we're seeing. But there's more emergency shelters going up. There's more people going into emergency shelter, at least year over year from December 2021. And so there could very well be positive correlations there. And then we would want to make sure that placements out of emergency shelter are something that we're focusing on, since we're having increased placements into emergency shelter. The supported services there that are navigating folks to housing would be more critical than ever. So just registering the point. Any other questions or comments? Okay, let's keep moving. We really just did the system performance measures quarterly review that Katie's going to do. So we will go ahead and move past that. We were going to also have a presentation.
Really quick, can I just comment on that?
You can do whatever you like.
We just launched on our website, and Cleo went through kind of all the system performance measures. But Jeremy, if you'll let me share my screen, want to share what we launched on the website as something for you all to be able to see over time. So every single quarter, this is reported in the system performance measures within the quarterly trends report, but we also have now on our website another tab under the data tab. So on our website, if you look at the top, here's this lovely data tab. There you go, slightly delayed. And right here, there's a page called the system performance measures. And basically what this does is it links you to what are all the system performance measures by HUD, but this also shows our system performance measures over time. So each tab is all of the different system performance measures, a brief description of that system performance and what it means, and then what is our reported system performance measures over time, and then the latest quarter. So we'll have the 4 latest quarters based off of what is included in that quarterly trends report. But wanted you also to be able to see, we've had a lot of folks say to us, it would be really helpful to see more historical over time. And then this is also interactive, showing our goal of where we're trying to get and what direction we're going. The next thing that we're going to do on this is add a trend line. So you can see very clearly if we're going in the right direction or the wrong direction, and what does that look like. Still working on, if you all have feedback to this, happy to make adaptations and changes to this, but really want, with our system performance measures being such a front and center thing that we're looking at focusing on, having the ability to access it at all times and being able to respond to which direction are we moving.
Thank you, Katie. Now, last month, the COC committee requested a presentation on the work that the Outreach Collaborative is doing. Michelle, Human Services Planner at MAG, will now share information on the Outreach Collaborative.
Great, thank you, Co-Chair Cruz.
Thank you, Michelle Miguel.
Yeah, thank you for having me here today to give an update on the Outreach Collaborative. We've been, on the Outreach Collaborative, outreach teams, they participated in completing a survey for the outreach mapping that happened a couple of months ago. Some of the areas, some of the items that we asked was like, what areas are they covering, the appropriate contact, and improvements, suggestions for the outreach viewer. We're currently working with our regional analytics team on the next phase of this, which is to add another layer on the hand up mapping tool. And that would map like the outreach teams and what areas they cover in the region. And it'll also include like an outreach provider count layer. For those of you that don't know, the hand up mapping tool, it displays homeless services in the region based on the 211 Arizona resource directory. And I could share my screen so you guys could see what that would look like. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Okay, so this is the hand up tool. So it labels like all the different types of resources, shelters, housing, food, clothing. And there's like filtering that you could like take off and everything, but the map layer is right here. And you could like do it by census maps or additional layers, and this is where it'll be right here. So we have layers right now of hospitals, libraries, light rail. So the goal is that the outreach teams, it'll be listed there, and then when you click on it, then you'll know what area it'll cover. Oh, there it is. Oh, it's completed. Oh, that's good news. My computer's a little slow. So as you could tell, right here, this dark purple, that's 15 to 16 outreach teams that cover that area. So if you could see, like most of like Phoenix, like Central Phoenix is covered. And then in the West Valley, there's 8 to 10 teams.
Can you zoom out just a little bit so we can see the? Thank you.
I wonder, can I take this out? No. Okay, I don't know how to remove that.
Hey, can you just toggle shelters in only?
Yeah. So yeah, this is pretty neat. This is exciting. I didn't know that that was completed. So it's completed. It's a nice update.
Happy to join in this moment. with
Yeah,
you.
thank you for pointing that out.
Aid, so teams, right? What constitutes a team?
They're in HMIS as a street outreach team.
Okay, so just a
But-
project in HMIS.
Yeah, but there's some projects that are set up as SSO, so supportive service only, that have that outreach function that'll put them on for like the 30 days. Yeah, like for example, the CBI Hand in Hand, that's an SSO project. Yeah.
Please note that this is self-reported. So
Oh, yeah.
it's based off of where outreach teams said they were operating. So as an outreach team, if you have a 6-team outreach team, you're probably not going to cover all of Phoenix in one day, right? Like you're throughout Phoenix throughout your time. So it is based off of self-report from outreach teams. And really the hope kind of next step with this is that there will also be a way to see what other outreach teams are in the same area as you are and to better coordinate outreach in the spaces. So for example, in the downtown core, there's probably 6 different outreach teams that all operate in this space, but how do we better coordinate to say like the CBI ASU team is coordinating with Phoenix Rescue Mission that's also serving that same area?
Yeah, it seems like, and you maybe you've already done this, but it would be really wise to overlay like pit count data, unsheltered data with lighter colored outreach areas and target outreach focus to those spots, you know.
Michelle, can you share your screen again? Because the other 2 things that are on this hand up that are really cool is there are 2 other map layers on the left side. If you click on map layers under homeless apps, there is street outreach locations. So this is where folks actually integrated with street outreach teams and recorded on the outreach mapper. And then the second layer on there that was right below that is where we had interactions for the pit count for 2022. So really exciting to see both of that, having that overlay with the area served by outreach. And then there's some other maps. So there's a bunch of things that you can interact with here. Really recommend you all look at it and feel free to ask us any questions on it too.
This is Jennifer. I had a question around those maps. Is there a way to overlay the heat-related deaths with the outreach teams? Because I know that was kind of a topic that I was going to bring up for a future agenda item, and just thinking, you know, where should we be targeting our outreach efforts? And it just makes sense to do it by zip code where we know there's been a significant number of heat-related deaths.
I don't think there is not currently that on the map, but we can definitely talk to our analytics team and see if it's possible to bring in that data too. Thank you.
Thank you. One more thing that we've been working on. Well, the outreach viewer, we made some edits on the data elements that are added there weekly. Let me share my screen on that. Some of the things that we added was primary reason for homelessness, loss of income, a current shelter, shelter entry date, housing move-in date, and the VI rank. So if they don't have a VI, if they scored for no housing intervention, rapid rehousing, and permanent supportive housing. And then we also have the date of the assessment too. So that way it'll be easier for the street outreach teams to coordinate and see who needs an assessment, if their assessment's outdated. We also have a section for income too. So if the person has income, and we changed, let me share my screen again. I love all these tools. So yeah, one of the things that we updated was, because before when you would first open it up, it would download all of the points from like 2018. And there, it was super slow. So now we have it set up where it's the last 30 days. And the reason the Outreach Collaborative decided on the 30 days is because that's how long, if you do an engagement, the person stays on the by name list. So ideally, if this gets updated every week, and then next week that person's not on there, then it's like, okay, well, you need to do an engagement or that trigger to put them back on the by name list. Yeah, so let me show you what that would look like. So right here on the filter, the only thing we added was the VI, what the rank was. And then if you click on client details, then all the other elements will be there. It's right here. So we're trying to encourage more outreach teams to use this, especially for the assessment as well, because a lot of outreach teams don't have the visibility of if the person has an assessment or not. So they have to switch to like the EDA of like the assessment and go back and forth. So sometimes they'll engage with the person and not know if they have an assessment or if they need to redo it.
Michelle, it's really cool stuff. In what ways is the Outreach Collaborative finding this useful? And if not fully utilized, in what ways do you hope that they utilize it better?
Well, if the person doesn't have like income, that's something that they could start working on, increasing income. If they were in shelter in the past, like it shows like where they were in shelter before. So maybe that's an opportunity for them to go back into that shelter or maybe connect with that case manager that was at that shelter to see what next steps were. What else? That people assess, because there you saw that there was a lot of people in the last 30 days that don't have an assessment and they just had an engagement too. So we're just trying to streamline the services too. And I mean, they say it's been working, so.
I think something that's like pretty unknown in our system is if you are an outreach team that is not an access point, you can't actually see if somebody has an assessment done or not. So that's where this improvement really came from, is people saying like, we had a bunch of people who were not assessed and outreach teams didn't know unless they were an access point that they weren't assessed. So the hope is here is people are going and looking and are able to see, because our technology limitations of HMIS didn't allow that. So we're creating other tools to be able to see that. I think the other element of the outreach viewer that has been really helpful is tracking people over time. So you can see like, did they move a ton? So I think the client that Michelle showed was just like 1 point, but it'll show all of your points over time. So if a person is consistently engaging with somebody over time, you can see where did they go and if they're staying in the same location, or maybe they were in Mesa yesterday and next week they're in downtown. And so maybe you're looking for them and you're trying to figure out where to engage them. And then the third thing is we have system people who are looking at these points and saying, how has this area changed over time? So specifically, Community Bridges use this to narrow in on North Mountain Healing Center and to say, how many points did we see in this 2-mile radius? How many less points did we see 2 months later because we did engagement around that area? So showing it over time. I think we're doing a ton of training in the Outreach Collaborative about how to use this, how to enter latitude and longitude. That is like a constant struggle of how do we best enter this, because it's not just a like seamless integration from Google Maps. But how do we continue to show over time? And really excited to see that like we are seeing an uptick in latitude and longitude usage. If you look at this 3 months ago, we had 500 points. Now we have 735 in the last month. So more people are using it because they understand how to use it. And this is a training that will probably be one of the first trainings in the learning management system because we know that it is like so valuable and we have a ton of turnover in outreach teams right now.
And I just want to jump off of what Katie was saying. I feel like this is a really good opportunity to remind everybody, if you work in an agency that has an outreach team, please encourage them to input all of the data because our data is only as good as the information that comes into it. So we just want to make sure that we're capturing the biggest picture, the clearest picture that we possibly can. So if you have that ability to just, nudge that outreach team in the right direction, or if they need training to help connect us to them, like Katie said, we're happy to do that. Because we just want to make sure that we have all the information possible. So they've been doing a great job, but we would love to see that number continue to go in the right direction.
For that. Well, we've been working on more though. There's more. So in our last meeting, we reviewed the community disability verification letter and the chronic homeless verification letter. Because some of the housing providers, it wasn't really standardized, like they receive it and it's not the format that we agreed upon as a COC. So I just went over it with them and we're working on like an intro cover page for the DVL, CHVL, and the homeless verification letter as well. And that'll be up on our website.
Awesome.
Too.
Are there other questions, thoughts? Points of clarity? Okay, if not, throw it back to Nathan for our next agenda item.
Yeah, thank you, Co-Chair Cruz. The annual notice of funding opportunity ranking process collects data and narrative responses for each project application on a standardized scorecard. To ensure an equitable and effective scoring process, the scorecard is being revised for the FY 2023 cycle. Dylan Belmont from Human Services Planner at MAG is going to share those revisions. Dylan, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Co-Chair. So by way of background, every year, U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development administers the Continuum of Care program competition, which is a funding opportunity that we apply for as a community. And each of these individual project applications that come from many of you, others in our community, are sort of like auto scored on this scorecard that's referenced, and that determines how these programs are ranked when that funding comes. And so in order to make sure that this scorecard continues to stay relevant and stay in line with community priorities, it does get revised from time to time. So I'm going to share my screen, a few of these revisions that have been made. And while I pull that up, I just want to mention that we have heard a lot of feedback so far from a few different sources. Let's see. It was brought to the Lived Experience Committee in the past few weeks, as well as a sort of public input session that we had, which featured a lot of past project applicants, as well as some former Rank and Review Committee members. And then it's going to be brought to the Race Equity Committee this Friday. So thank you, anyone on this call who has participated in those meetings or provided feedback. Definitely appreciate it as we move this process forward. Okay, so what you're seeing here may look familiar to you. The overall aesthetic and design hasn't changed much, but this is what the scorecard looks like for renewal projects, projects that have already been funded by us. I want to first call attention to these metrics over here on the side for a lot of these questions that are auto-scored based on, project applicants' APRs. One of the major changes has been updating these system performance measures. A lot of those metrics have adjusted slightly because now the system performance is accurately reflecting the time period that most of these APRs will cover. I believe our last scorecard, those system performance measures were from 2017. Yeah, 2017. So this just brings it up to, more accurately reflect how projects should be performing compared to the rest of the system. With that, we also saw a few changes with how scoring is allocated in the first place. So what we are really hoping for is, a more diverse range of scores for each applicant. That way, it can be easier to, judge where all sit based on performance. Previously, we heard concerns from the Rank and Review Committee when viewing all these applications that, a lot of projects were scoring similarly. Everyone was, getting full points, and that makes it difficult to actually put them, in order or rank them. So we've kind of stretched those out, allowed for, more room to score. I will say, this isn't necessarily a consequence or indicative of poor performance. It's really just allowing for more wiggle room to make those determinations. But yeah, generally you'll see now the system performance, which sort of averages how the system is faring. The system performance is now closer to the middle of the pack in terms of points, because we do see a lot of projects, exceed those, exceed that like percentage, and we want to see that incentivized in some way. That covers most of it with data. Another thing I do want to mention is that a few of the questions have been adjusted to sort of along that same line, like increase objectivity, rather than the subjective nature of some of the narrative responses. So there have been a few adjustments to questions for housing first and monitoring that should put a lot of the focus on scoring back to how is the program actually performing, and that is about it. So these were included in the agenda packet for your review, but we're really looking for any other feedback, as well as approval of the existing scorecards.
Is there a way to highlight what's different from last year? Like I was looking to see if it was in red or something.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. That is, why didn't I do that? That can be done. I can redistribute it after the meeting. I can ask Haley maybe to send it out to the membership.
We could do that if that is what you guys want. That would delay us approving.
What are the consequences if we delay approving it?
NOFO can't roll out at the right time. The biggest change, like if we could talk through the changes with you as to what they are different. Unfortunately, if we delay this vote to April, applicants are now going to be in a time crunch for rolling it out in May for you all to apply for renewal applicants. So want to make sure it's getting out in front of people who are applying for these.
So it would give you all
funding.
less time.
The changes for, you want to talk through these or you want me to?
Yeah, I can pull up my screen again.
While you're doing that, just ask a clarifying question, kind of similar to Jennifer, just trying to, plot the changes. Cause like I sat with the old scorecard and still can't exactly see what changed. So like when you're looking at 2A, for instance, it sounds like one of the change or well, no, I'm sorry. It was, 2A, the increased housing stability. Sounds like you created like the baseline is different. The 93% was updated based on more recent activity. And you created more categories for scoring. Is that right? So they're small, the percentage is smaller, the range is smaller or is bigger?
Essentially, yeah. So for this one specifically, it is still the same like number of categories. It's just like where the full point threshold is has like increased. So now that 93 used to be like full points, whereas now, since we did see agency scoring like above the system, the average performance, the average is now brought down, and then there's room above that essentially.
Yeah, since I've sat on rank and review a good number of times, that definitely is a really good change. I know we sit there, look at those applications that come in, and it's like everybody killed it, and there's got to be more variety in performance, right? So I love that this will draw that variety out a lot better.
So to give context to what the change was, is that the system performance used to be from 17 to 18, and we had never updated it since then. And some projects or some questions, everybody was scoring full points or everybody was scoring 0 points because it was based off of where we were 5 years ago, and our system has changed. We're housing different people than we were 5 years ago. And so when you look at like, for example, the one that Dylan has pulled up on his screen of 2A, the actually maybe we scroll down slightly to 2A second, because that one changed by 1%. This used to be in 17 to 18, 51%. No, wait. It used to be 76%. Now it's 70%. So our rapid rehousing projects were not able to increase housing stability as quickly. So, and these percentages are based off of averages that we see in our system right now. And so really it's doing just that, Nate. It's separating scores a little bit more so that when we go to rank and review and there is an 81 and an 82, that doesn't really help rank and review see that much of an impact. So essentially what this will do is just spread out scores further so that we have an 81 and an 85. So we can actually use discretionary points more effectively to say, oh, this is why this was happening. They were serving 95% chronic folks, or this other project was serving 10% chronic folks. And this is why they had significantly higher system performance measures, is because they had less chronic folks in their project. And so we can walk you through kind of every single one, but that the average percentage changed. And when we built this 5 years ago in 2017 and 18, we used the same numbers to then determine the 13 points. So right there at 70%, that's now 13. So those numbers in the 0 to 15 shifted based off of what the averages were. So when it was 76%, that was still 13 points. So that's where you see kind of that shift happening. The other things that changed, as Dylan mentioned, was kind of the monitoring questions and things like that. So I'm happy to also walk you through those as to what those change, if that's helpful.
That's actually one of the things I was curious about. So we sit in rank and review every year and we're like, how did they do last year? And let's take that into consideration when thinking about the discretionary points. But obviously that requires more MAG oversight. And so, yeah, my question really is, how will their past performance and any monitorings that have been done on them over the last year and the projects that were just funded factor into the rank and review process?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. So essentially, the monitoring process in general has changed a lot since the last rank and review process. There is like more information to go off now. So the existing questions, I wouldn't say that the monitoring questions themselves have changed that much. Where are they? Is it 10? So there was, in addition to this one, 10B, that one's new, essentially just organizations complying with providing the necessary documentation to move forward with monitoring. But really 10A, we'll see the most difference in the form of, now we have more information from monitoring and will like better inform how this is scored, if that makes sense. And sort of, oh, sorry, go ahead.
So the scoring and such doesn't change. You just have better data to work with.
Essentially, yeah.
Gotcha.
However, there was a change with the housing first questions. Initially, 9A right here, used the USICH Housing First checklist. If you're familiar with it, it was essentially just 11 bullet points and you check yes or no. Almost everyone got full points, right? Like you just check it. Now there's a new tool that's a little bit more in depth. We've seen, in those who have returned this tool, like in part of their monitoring, we have seen once again, more a higher range of diversity in scores. So, that's another area where we should see some movement.
So instead of everybody getting a checklist that says, do you do this on Housing First? And they all almost unanimously every single time say, yes, of course I do that. There will be more variability in those responses now.
Right.
Cool. Great. I have all the information I need. Thanks.
And I think that covers most of it. There was also the addition of question 12, which focuses on lived experience. Something we heard from the lived experience committee was really a focus on, if this is being asked as part of the application, like what is the proof to back it up, right? Like not only are organizations including voices of those with lived experience, but like how is it impacting policy decisions? How is it affecting program implementation? So this question was added with the focus on, providing that documentation and evidence, with also room for, further explanation in the interview questions. And I would say those cover essentially all the, main changes.
Jennifer, you feel like you got what you need? Are there any other comments or discussion from the committee for Dylan?
Once approved, when does it go out?
So it still needs to go to the board as well. It'll go to the board 27th on March, I think. And then from there, it's just a matter of waiting for HUD to release this year's notice of funding opportunity.
Being that it goes to the board on the 27th, could we not make a motion that approves in advance, like asking for you to do that information and we give you the approval, because we're just asking for him to add the numbers to it? We can be very specific in the motion that we put forward so that you get the approval now for what you're about to do. Could we not do that? So this way, the question around hey, can we have the difference so that people can see this is what the change is in the document?
Just to be clear, so you're just saying you will approve conditionally based on every subsequent presentation will have the changes highlighted.
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. Remember.
Vanessa Carthel, I do have one question with.
Yeah.
I know the MAG staff said that they've received feedback. Is there any feedback that you've received that has impacted changes in the revisions?
Yeah. Thank you, Vanessa. So the lived experience question definitely came straight out of those discussions. And then also during the public input session, we heard a few things. Let me pull it up again on my end just to go back through it. There was one metric that needed to be adjusted regarding data quality. We also I think that those two were the main ones.
Thank you.
If there's nothing else, I'd like to have a motion to approve the notice of funding opportunity FY 2023 scorecard with the condition that future changes between one version and the next version are highlighted so that the committee can see what we're approving more clearly. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Thank you, Allison. How do I do it?
Sorry, just a quick reminder, when you're speaking in the room, if you could turn on your mic. Thank you.
Thank you. For committee members in the room, we will do a voice vote. Those in favor, please say yay.
Yay.
Yay. Those opposed, please say nay. Thank you. For members joining remotely, I'll ask Haley to proceed with a roll call vote. Please indicate clearly how you vote, stating yay or nay after your name is called. Haley?
Thank you. Michelle Alberti,
Yay.
Don Bogart, Vanessa Carthel,
Yay.
Callie Lamers for Aaron Cowan-Haig,
Yay.
thank you. Stephanie Crum,
Yay.
Nicole Gibson,
Yay.
Anne Marie Johnston,
Yay.
Christina Lopez,
Yay.
Jim McPherson, Aaron Rain, Patricia Scott Lopez,
Yay.
Laura Scott Nicky,
Yay.
and the motion passes. Back to you, Chair.
I got it. So thank you. If you just as a note, if you didn't take notice, we added 30 minutes to the meeting because we always run up against this wall around like what it is that we have. So we do still have things to go through. So agenda item 11 related to performance standards will no longer be heard. Please look forward to the full document with metrics included at the next committee meeting in April. We now move on to the next agenda item.
Yes, thank you. So each year, the Maricopa Regional Continuum of Care Board reviews and updates the board strategic plan. After receiving input from all Maricopa Regional Continuum of Care committees, they have finalized the 2023 strategic plan. Katie Gentry, Regional Homelessness Program Manager at MAG, will present on the finalized strategic plan. Katie, take us away.
I will asterisk this before I start of like finalized, unless you all have input. If there are things you want to work on this year, please let us know so we can include them in the strategic plan, and the board wants to hear those feedback points
Hey,
also.
Katie, let me just double down on that. The reason why I feel like this and the next agenda item are incredibly important for us is because it helps establish the true north for our committee. In other words, what are we doing? What is our purpose? What are we about? And very much, very, very importantly, what are we going to accomplish? And so it's really important that we, as we look at these next two things, situate ourselves within the board strategic plan. To Katie's point, they're giving us the ability to say, we want to fit in here. So let's be bold enough to identify where exactly we feel like we can fit in and best support what the board's trying to do. So yes, think of where do we fit in and think boldly in that context as Katie takes us away.
Thanks, Co-Chair Smith. If you'll go to the next page, this was also included in your packet. This summary and framework just essentially got shortened from last year. I'm hoping that you all know our summary and framework by the time you're looking at a strategic plan, because this is based off of on our website. And we're also trying to link as many places as possible throughout the strategic plan to places back on the website where things are going to get updated on a regular basis rather than a one-time document that you print and then don't go back to. Next page. We skipped a page. There we go. So this first page, so there's 4 frameworks that the board is really looking through: regulatory roles and oversight, system performance measure improvement, monitoring, evaluation, technical assistance, and then this very overarching last section that is communication, coordination, and strategy. So if you have a new name for that, also let me know. The regulatory roles, oversight, and approvals, these are the things that are required every single year by the Department of Housing and Urban Development as a continuum of care. So really looking at membership, making sure you have a robust membership, and opening membership every single year. You all open membership right at the end of the year and welcome new members at the beginning of this year. We do have timing spaced out among all of our committees. So theoretically, we should not have multiple committees open at the same time. And also they kind of roll into one another. So maybe the committee wasn't a good fit for you, but there's a different committee that would be a better fit for you depending on what your role is. Some other things that you all are responsible for here are reviewing and adopting your community adopted best practices, your COC standards for administering assistance, your monitoring policy, infectious disease preparation and response policy, and protections for victims of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking, or better known as VAWA. This is something that you all approved in January. This is something that we've been working really hard on and really excited that those are finally approved and they are on the website. So you're able to go look at those, review those, apply them to your program at any time. As you can see, kind of some of the other things that are required on here that are tasked to other committees or the board, reviewing the governance charter, the NOFO, point in time count, monitoring, allocation of ESG funds. So I'll pause, see if you all have any questions, and then go to the next page. Okay. This is really the meat and potatoes of the board strategic plan, really focused on the system performance measures. So this is something that brings additional dollars into the community. The NOFO is strongly based on the system performance measures. And so this is a series of activities that are really working to shift both short-term and long-term the system performance measures along with the timeline. You'll see on the left side is the system performance measure that it's tasked to, what the activity is, who is the lead. That doesn't mean they are the end all be all. They are just who is leading the work. And then the timeline for it being done. The two that I want to highlight for you all specifically are increasing connection to other systems of care, including higher level of care to reduce returns. So this is specifically focused on returns to homelessness. So if somebody is getting housed, how are we getting them connected to other systems outside of the homeless response system so that they're not coming back into the homeless response system? I know you all have been working on work group that has had floated and lost a little bit of vision. And so interested if you all want to keep that or if you want to remove that and have a different activity here. And then the second one that is tasked to the committee is looking at developing an education process for those other systems of care. This is really focused on length of time of homelessness. So how are we having people not come into our system and spending a lot of time in our emergency shelters, so coming out of prison, coming out of hospitals, coming out of the education system and into the homeless response system, and then staying in rather than never entering the homeless response system in the first time. We should probably also add first time homeless as another system performance measure that this would be impacting. Those are the two that are specifically tasked to the committee. I'm happy to walk through the rest of these if you are interested, but also hopefully you reviewed this in your packet prior to coming.
I had a quick question. This is Jennifer. For some reason, I don't know what the local jurisdiction committee is. Can you just give a little?
Yeah, brief
overview?
blurb. The local jurisdiction committee was a committee that was created last year. They were originally a work group and then got moved into a committee. It's every local jurisdiction in the MAG region. So it's going to be, there's 27 cities and towns, 3 tribal governments and 2 county governments. They each have a designated seat on that committee. So it's your Phoenix, Scottsdale, Gilbert, Cave Creek, Maricopa County, like it is every single jurisdiction. They automatically have a seat on it and they designate who their representative is. A lot of the work that they are focused on is Pathways Home and the work to moving that forward. But like, for example, this one specifically that is highlighted on this first page is looking at how do we understand diversion and prevention programs, and then they have one on the next page that's a little bit longer term. That's how do we increase diversion and prevention programs, because they're the ones who control a lot of the money going into diversion and prevention right now. Also want to highlight, they are the lead. They are not the end all be all, right? So we have an internal document that says this is the lead, but here are the 7 other committees each of these activities need to go to get feedback. So for example, the chronic work group activity of reviewing long-term stayers over 98 days. Chronic work group is taking the lead on that because those are a lot of chronic folks staying in shelter for a long amount of time, but it is also going to data committee to review. It's going to lived experience for how do we improve that? It's going to race equity. Do we have an inequitable, who is those people who are staying longer in shelter versus shorter? So using that as an example, pretty much all of these don't just stay with one group, but rather go to other lateral committees as well.
So that seems like the big questions on the table are, one, do we like the things that are assigned to us thus far? And do we see ourselves fitting into something that's not currently assigned in, but that we want to put some focus and attention into from this committee?
And third, are there other activities you all want to work on that aren't captured in the strategic plan under system performance measures?
This is Jennifer again. I just had a question around like the increased connection to other systems of care and develop education process for other systems of care. It seems like we have a current work group that is called Connection to. So how does that work? Is that a subset of the committee? So if the work group does the work, does the committee get the credit for it? I guess is what I'm saying.
That is a great question, Jen, and I'd be happy to answer that for you. So basically, we sort of think about it like this, right? We have like at max 2 hours every month that we can come and meet, and we have a whole host of business that we have to get through. So in order to like do the real meaningful work, it's very impractical to try to power that all into this one meeting. So we have the work group that sort of stems off of our committee in order to like basically take the entire hour, however long we want it to be. Right now, the meetings are an hour long, to really just dig into that work specifically. So it is members of the committee. So right now, I think we have like 5 or 6 members of the committee that are in that group. However, all work groups are open to anybody. So if anybody would like to join, they're welcome to. But the committee oversees that work that's being done. So basically when the work group is like, okay, here is our idea, here's the finished project, it will come to you guys and you'll say, yep, that looks great. We want to, send it on to the next committee for approval, or no, maybe go back and look at this, try again. So I don't know if that is helpful, but the short answer is yes, you do get the credit for it.
Sorry.
And then I'm sorry, just to be clear, that's pretty much how it is with all of every project, I guess, activity will have its own work group because it's pretty impractical to try to fit it into the our regular meetings.
Yeah, and I think I asked the question, I'm not trying to be difficult, but if it's the committee and then we have these work groups and it's the same 4 people volunteering for the work groups, I just want to make sure that the committee is doing things together, or everybody's engaged and it's not, the same 4 people doing all the work and then reporting back to the committee. So again, I'm not trying to be difficult, but just trying to like wrap my head around, what does it really look like when we're doing the work and making sure that everybody is volunteering for the work groups. Outside of this 2-hour meeting, there's other work that has to happen, outside of this meeting, and just encouraging everybody to get involved.
Yes, I'd like to say I don't think that's difficult at all. And I definitely echo what you're saying. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Meetings are second Wednesday of the month. Was it like 10 o'clock, something like that?
First Wednesday of the month, typically. Our last month was a little offset because of the conference, but it'll be back to the first Wednesday of the month.
Gotcha.
10 a.m.
There you go.
Sorry, I was reading. Okay, so one of the things that I do want to applaud and push on is in the summary and framework. I do appreciate the fact that equity is lifted. I would just push to say like equity should lead. That's my feedback. I know last year it wasn't in there. It was just like a thing that, well, the initial draft that came out, it wasn't in there, and it was like, well, it's informing the process. We have to get to a point where it's not informing the process, but it's forming the process. And when we look at communities that are having significant gains around homelessness and combating and ending homelessness, it's about how does equity form the conversation as opposed to just inform the conversation. So thank you for the progress. And so we're doing better. But like I've just pushed to say like we need to do more around that, and what does it look like in a more robust way to tackle equity, because otherwise when we look at the data, The data tells us exactly what the data is going to tell us. And at this point, for us to have a conversation that says, well, we know that the numbers are disproportionate and that's not good. Okay, well, we know that. Now what are we going to do about it? Right. So I just want to encourage us to push around that. Are there any other comments, concerns, additions, things that people would like to see added to the strategic plan?
Finish going through it.
Yeah, I was going to say,
sorry.
Katie, do you want to keep going through it? And then maybe if we have any ideas,
I
we
thought
can,
we were at a point.
sorry, we can write them down and then maybe revisit at the end. Cause I know maybe you guys have ideas and it's like, oh, I don't really know where this fits in. Totally. That's totally fine. If you just want to give us your ideas, we can fit it into the plan later on.
Keep going, Jamie. Keep going. Keep going one more. All right. This next section is really looking at monitoring, evaluation, and technical assistance. This was a huge focus point for the board, specifically last year, because this wasn't being done at such a robust level. So really excited that a lot of these are annual things, but we've accomplished a lot of them. Reviewing metrics for monitoring and evaluation. We now have a monitoring policy that came to you all in January. So that was something that we never had prior to last year. So really looking, the things that you all are responsible for is reviewing the NOFO scorecard and providing feedback. Thank you. You all did that today. Reviewing metrics used for monitoring and evaluating agencies. That was presented to you in January and you gave feedback. The other things that are in here are really responsive to what MAG is responsible for. So making sure we're doing monitoring, providing technical assistance with not only COC funded providers, but the community as a whole. So working with our ESG funders if they're funding a shelter. And then we're also working collaboratively to say, maybe we don't fund them, but somebody still needs technical assistance. And so how can we get that technical assistance to folks? So maybe it's a private funder, or maybe it is a government funder, or whoever that may look like, that we make sure that we're kind of bringing rising tides lift all ships. So making sure that we're bringing the whole system up to where we're hoping to have to be at. And then lastly, I want to highlight in addition, creating a learning management system for consistent and available training. This is something that we've been working hours on, maybe weeks at this point, and really excited to be launching that this spring. And so that got added specifically into the plan, and that will be maintained. And we're hoping to have a really robust set of trainings, not only that are crowdsourced and available by system subject matter experts in the community, but also some contracted training similar. We have our race equity training that happened in February that was recorded and will be added in, but have a series of other trainings that we're looking to create as well. And then lastly, this communication and coordination and strategy. If you want to go to the next page. Really working to further refine some of the work that we're doing. So public education campaign, refining the funding filter to understand the breadth of funding going into the homeless response system, creating a shelter bill of rights, continuing to work through the race equity plan. There's a line missing there. Don't know what that was. Creating a communication plan, applying for the youth homelessness demonstration project. So this is kind of capturing a lot of the other work that is being done that does not fall into kind of like very much HUD required language of us or system performance measures. So really, if there are other activities that you all want to work on, happy to add it here as well, or in the other categories, as Haley mentioned.
Okay. So I have a piece with this. Last week at the Unsheltered Conference, Lavelle Adams, Pelham from LA. One of the things that she had said was that we cannot expect to have equitable outcomes if equity is like an et cetera in the job description, as opposed to, like, again, forming as opposed to informing. It can't be the when you watch the award shows, the thank you very much and God bless, right? Like I want to thank God, like it's the last thing that they say, right? It's like it can't be that. So in that it being the last line, I would encourage you to put it as the first line or near the top when it comes to continuing implementing the work of the Race Equity Plan. When it's the way that like that presents to me is as an afterthought. It's a thought because like it made the document. But when we put it at the bottom, like it's a bottom level priority. And sometimes the way things look matters, especially in a space where people don't want to talk about equity, when people don't want, whether it's racial equity, whether we're talking about lived experience, whether we're talking about socioeconomic factors, like people don't want to have conversations about historical forms of oppression, and that's what creates the table upon which we sit. So from that context, I would encourage for the plan to have that particular line raised up beyond where it is.
I think we can certainly look into that since that's an ongoing, but just want to mention that this is based in a chronological order. So since it's ongoing, it was just at the bottom rather than at the top, but I think we can discuss whether we want ongoing projects at the top. That will just have to be formatted in the entire document, but wanted to make sure that it's clear that it's not because it's last priority, it's just in a chronological order.
Understood. I'm just raising it here because I know where we sit. I'm not being critical of the organization. I'm saying I know where we sit when it comes to from an Arizona context. The Confederacy is still alive in this space, and it's what created many of our municipalities, for that matter. So, like, people need to be reminded that if we want to make a shift as a community, we have to shift how we see things. That's all.
Vanessa Carthel, ABC. Along those lines, this strategic plan is for the year of 2023, or is it a 2-year, 3-year plan?
The goal is really to be inclusive of all of the activities that you're doing in 2023. The activities, a lot of these activities started in 2022. We also recognize that not all of this can get done in the next 9 months. So there are things that kind of roll into the future. You'll see dates that go all the way into 2027 because that's where Pathways Home terminate or is through. So if you were looking to take on a giant project, my hope in it is that it's broken down into some of those smaller digestible chunks of we can get this accomplished by June, we can get this accomplished by December. Maybe there is a larger chunk that it goes all the way through December of 2025, but really wanting to make sure that this is something that is actionable and we are seeing change happening. One of the other elements of this is that we are starting to create a board strategic plan quarterly review. So this will go to the board with a 1-pager infographic, maybe it's a 2-pager, really showing the accomplishments of what is the work being done. And we created a 2022 accomplishments from the board strategic plan. And I think we don't spend enough time reflecting on what did we actually accomplish and how are we continuing to snowball the work forward. And so that is really the hope, is that they're bite-sized enough that we can actually move the work forward. And it's not just this giant task that we have to do through the next 5 years, if that helps.
Yes, and that leads into my next question or comment is on the Race Equity Committee in the communication coordination strategy section. I know that being a committee member, that there are very specific kind of action-oriented goals with target dates that the committee has. So I personally, and I think that it should go back to the Race Equity Committee. I think that this activity should be more succinct. Instead of just saying continuing implementing the work, really saying what are we working on? Because I know that is outlined in the committee's work.
Just a quick question. The Connecting Other Systems of Care work group met last week. On the agenda, there were topics around identifying the goals of the work group. Just curious, as we consider whether or not that's something we want to continue to lean in on from the board strategic plan, what came out of that conversation? Were any goals set?
There were not. We had a sort of mix of different individuals who joined that group who hadn't been in it before. I was also out, so I had another staff covering that. So they decided to table that discussion for another month. So I think that it maybe is a better conversation to have in the work group, but I do think that there is work to be done before we can start the work, if that makes sense.
One of the things that I'll just say this, I would love to keep it if it meant something like this. We are going to go through and find all the systems that release people into homelessness. that we know are not terribly well integrated. And we're going to ask them questions about their experience in connecting with services that intervene in homelessness, the scope of the problem. So like we're meeting with folks from hospitals, we're meeting with folks from the jail systems and all these other education systems, and asking these questions and then documenting what their responses are, and trending out what these responses are. So in other words, turning that qualitative information into actual data and then figuring out where those gaps in the other systems exist, and then establishing a plan to close those gaps. That all feels really practical. It feels really doable. If that was something along the lines of the spirit of the work group, I would be like, yeah, let's lean in hard. If not, then it's going to remain rudderless. Then yeah, I would say let's switch it up.
Yeah, I think that's like a really good point too. It seems like we could maybe modify what we have in the plan to be more like an umbrella, like Katie was saying. If you want something to go on for the next few years, we can do that, but how can we make these bite-sized pieces? So maybe it's like, okay, let's, before June, we want to have made sure that we have connected with the healthcare system, or like, the 3 biggest hospitals in Maricopa County, and figured out the system. So like, maybe we just break it down a little further. So then when we meet as a work group, it's really just like, okay, we already know what our mission is because it's in our little blurb that's been written. So that is definitely something that we can talk more about. Yeah. Okay, perfect. So then if we just want to sort of like push that end date out beyond, I think it's at June right now, maybe May. So we can have a little bit more time to work on those bite-sized pieces, if that makes sense.
Okay, maybe I'll be at the meeting next month, so maybe we can discuss it there. But we are running behind on time, so I will thank everyone and move on. Thank you, Katie. Psych.
If folks have additional things to add, please send me an email and we're happy to get those incorporated into the board strategic plan. Please send any comments or feedback that you have by next Wednesday.
Thank you. The Maricopa Regional Continuum of Care Board and committees are currently in the process of reviewing, adjusting, or reaffirming their mission statements. The Maricopa Regional Continuum of Care Committee's mission statement is as follows. The purpose of the committee is to provide input and recommendations to the Continuum of Care Board and MAG staff and support communication across groups. The committee continuously improves program and system quality, promotes education and training opportunities, informs community planning efforts and decision-making, and fosters communication and collaboration. We would like to create a work group to evaluate and amend the COC committee's mission statement. So are there any discussion from the committee? Would you like to create a work group to like dive into that and like see if that's what we really want to do? Like, do we want to meet outside of this space and have a conversation about that? That doesn't go on forever. Yes, like one meeting. One meeting.
One really good meeting.
Is there? So is there interest in that, or is just everybody wants to keep it the way that it is?
I mean, how fast could we flash the mission statement up on the screen? Can we get that up pretty quickly? I know we looked at it before, but like, I just unfortunately did not memorize it. Oh.
Yes.
It's there. I just read it. Yes. That would have been cool if I just knew it. Jennifer.
Is there any way we can just review the mission statement in this larger meeting to ensure that everybody who's on the committee has the opportunity to give input versus trying to schedule a work group and some people can come and some people can't?
So let me ask this. They're going to put it up on the board. And what I would ask about that, because we have 6 minutes right now. That's it. Not 6 minutes for this agenda item, 6 minutes for the rest of the meeting, but this is the last piece. So if you scroll down, okay, hold it right there. So this is the
part in quotes.
The part in quotes and the bullet points. So I would ask, one, is this sufficient? Or is there more or something that we want to be able to, you got to spread it out there we go. There we go. Or is there more? And I would just acknowledge that adequacy sits on the borderline of scarcity, that like adequacy and abundance are two different things. So what is the pleasure of, or of the group around, does this accurately describe what we do and what we want to do? And then if there's any hands up, I would need you to let me know because we're looking at it. Go ahead, Jennifer.
I just had a question around and support communication across groups. What do we mean by groups? Like what groups are we talking about?
I feel like at this point, groups just sort of encompasses, I would say, the entire COC. So that would be all of the board, all of the committees, all of the work groups, and then our collaboratives as well.
Can we call that out that way?
Did I spell it all out?
Mm-hmm. Other thoughts, questions that people have? Go ahead.
Relatively new to the group. So I haven't seen us talk a ton around promoting education and training opportunities. To Richard's point, I think less is more oftentimes. And so I'm trying to like make sure we focus our scope so that we can really have an impact. And right now it feels a little broad. For broadly stated bullet points means we can do whatever we want. So to narrow it down some, promoting education and training opportunities hasn't dominated our conversation. So if that got stricken, I could live with that. I love the first one because it can focus our attention as a high level committee into, the kinds of things that are in there. I love the third one, informing community planning efforts and decision making. I think the connection to other systems of care work group has a lot of potential in that. And then fosters communication and collaboration, to me, doesn't necessarily need to be a bullet point. Like we should all foster collaboration and communication. You're right. It's in the job description. I don't think it needs to be stated as a mission statement, bullet point. Those are my initial reactions.
Since it does state communication above, would you like to add communication and collaboration across groups and then remove that final bullet point?
Say that again.
Sure. So in that sentence up at the top, before we get to the bullet points, it says, and support communication across groups. We're going to add more specificity around groups. Do you want to add collaboration? So it would say, and support communication and collaboration across groups, and then remove that bullet point? Or do you want to remove collaboration totally?
No, I like collaboration, again, because the connection to other systems of care work group actually is key. So maybe I just take back what I said altogether. Yeah, pretend like that didn't happen.
I think maybe similarly, it's like that's something we should all be doing. And maybe it's a good reminder to have it, and then a good reminder to put it in everybody else's mission statements too. But thank you for that feedback.
We all died? Okay, no. I just died. Okay. And now they make sure that I lived again. Okay, so the only part that I would change here then is informs community planning efforts and impactful decision making. Like it just, because we need to not just make decisions to make decisions, but we need to be impactful. And so from what I've heard in the room, this is what I've got. The purpose of the committee is to provide input and recommendations to the Continuum of Care Board and MAG staff and support communication and collaboration across the continuum of care, like across because we said like the entire continuum and spelling that out. The committee continuously improves program and system quality, we strike the second one, and informs community planning efforts and impactful decision making. Okay. That's what I've got. Okay. If somebody typed that out. If so, I need a motion for to adopt that as the mission statement, and then we don't have to have a meeting.
Well, we could always write it out and then just approve it at the next meeting.
Okay. Okay, that'll work. So we'll put that in the consent agenda.
Yes, we could put it on the.
Okay, we'll put it in the consent agenda for the next meeting. Okay. Is it me? Okay. Okay. Oh, I've got your mic.
So thank you very much. We'll move on to the next agenda item. Do committee members have any action or discussion items for future meetings? Richard mentioned earlier that it would be great to include an update from the Connection to Other Systems of Care work group in each of these meetings. I think that'd be a good idea. So if we can just have a quick update on activity at the next meeting, that would just keep us connected.
Also, Vanessa, you had mentioned something that we said we should put on the agenda that you'd like to see us for next month.
Yes, I think it was for the data subcommittee, but I thought that idea was kind of replaced with the data walk.
Yes, but so that won't happen probably next month, but it will happen. So yes, okay. So also like for our planning meeting to discuss that and what we need to do for that.
And to clarify, Vanessa, I know you mentioned a couple. Did you want that update from the data committee or the data analytics work group?
No, I don't think that there's an update needed after that discussion. I think it evolved into let's have actionable data walk. It from my recollection, but let me know if I'm wrong. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Any others? Okay. If no others, do we have any comments from the committee? So if no other comments, because I give this number every month, January's number was 59 plus 32. So 92, 91 was the number. So 91 people in the month of January passed away while experiencing homelessness. That's in January. So I don't know what that number looks like when we get to the summer. That's why I said like we're trending between 12 and 1,500 people that are going to pass away over the next 12 months while experiencing homelessness. We are in a different reality than what we have been in the past. We are beyond those numbers that we were in 2 years ago when we were like, oh, 550, that's scary. And then a year goes 557, that's scary. And then like, well, last year was 1,233. That should be horrifying. And just understand like we are trending in that same way, if not more so, with the way that the numbers look coming out of this last transient death list. So the moment is now. It's not later. It's not like we can't pass the ball. The moment is now. And so while I thank you all for the work that we're doing, we all also need to do more. Are there any other comments from the committee? Jennifer.
I don't know if it's a comment or a request for a future agenda item, but my understanding is that MAG has a work group around heat-related deaths. I think, is Kelly leading that?
So I could talk to that a little bit. We don't have a work group through like our homelessness prevention team specifically. There is the Cooling Center Network and the Heat Resilience work group that are run through ASU. Melissa Guardaro and Richmond, I believe, are the two people over at ASU who lead those. So if you're interested in joining those conversations, I can definitely get you that information. MAG houses the Heat Relief Network map and are considered sort of one of the leaders in that space, but we don't have a work group around it.
Awesome. So thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned. I will say that I thank you all for hanging with us for this additional 30 minutes and proving that it was useful time for us to spend together. Thank you very much. Have a great day.